Ireland and Argentina this Friday, folks, from the Aviva Stadium. A chance for Ireland to bounce back after disappointment last week. And can the Pumas find some consistency? They are the new France. Their record this year has been both impressive and shocking. They're coming off a win over the Italians, a record win. But 2 weeks in a row has proved to be something of a difficult one for the Argentinians. We'll go through the squads which have been named, some recent history between the sides, some stats, some predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. How good is November? So many test matches on, although it does make for something of a congested fixtures schedule. The Argentinians for this one are on a 6-day turnaround, having played on Saturday. The Irish have got an extra day's rest, having played the All Blacks last Friday. But I guess the Argentinians may be a touch of an advantage in the fact that Felipe Contepomi, having worked at Leinster before, has pretty familiar knowledge of some of these Leinster players who are featuring for Ireland. And most of them that played last week are still there. Andy Farrell has not kind of thrown the baby out with the bathwater in terms of some of the reactions for Ireland's loss last week, which have been somewhat in the extreme. I've been reading a few articles and listening to a few podcasts, and you might think that Ireland are suddenly the worst team in the world listening to some talk. I don't think they're going to be flat 2 weeks in a row, personally. I feel like they're going to bounce back pretty handily, but, I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe the side is over the hill. Maybe they do all need to go. I don't know. We'll kind of see how things go this weekend. Porter, Kelleher and Beelum, that is the same front row as last week. Beelum will be hoping to play slightly fewer minutes. Remember, with O'Toole's injury last week, he had to play a lot of rugby. He got the side's only clean break of the game, which is unusual, being the tight head prop. Speaks to a little bit of a lack of sharpness around the rest of the park, one would imagine. But yes, he was getting pretty knackered by the end of the game. So fingers crossed for him. It's kind of an hour-ish performance. Remember, there's a debutant, Thomas Clarkson, on to replace him. So they'll be hoping that Beelum can at least, as I say, go, one would think, an hour or so before introducing the debutant. And line-out time. Kelleher and the rest of the forwards will be looking to get that a bit more secure because it was a little bit shaky at times last week. The second row is still McCarthy and Ryan. Ryan got through a heap of tackles last week. He was the top Irish tackler with 17, putting in some big hits. And then the back row is also unchanged. Byrne, Van der Fleer and Doris. Doris was uncharacteristically quiet last week, you know. He's got a leg drive post-contact meters to kind of rival anybody in World Rugby, but 9 carries, 16 meters for him. Pretty quiet. Van der Fleer got the only try of the game for the Irish last week, but it was a lack of possession overall, you feel, that cost the Irish. Gibson Park was sharp last week. I mean, some of those defensive sweeping plays he was doing were excellent. He got the only try assist of the game, setting up the kind of running line for Van der Fleer, so more of the same from him. Crowley will be looking to get a bit more ball in hand, but that's going to come down to what the guys in front of him are doing. The only change to the starting 15 comes in with Henshaw replacing Aki at 12, but with Henshaw, Ringrose and Aki kind of rotating around the last few years, you're still going to get good value whichever one of these guys you pick. Ringrose is at 13, as I said, continues on. Hansen and Lowe, the two wings, and then Keenan there at fullback. So, yeah, the only change is Henshaw. Lowe was good last week, man. Kicked a nice 50-22. Busted a few tackles, but, yeah, lack of ball. These guys just need a bit more ball in hand. Bench-wise, Herring and Healy continue on. Healy, it's a big occasion for him because he will become a record-equaling Irish-capped player if he comes off the bench. So big congratulations to him. Made his debut in 2009, which is pretty crazy when you consider Sam Prendergast, who's going to get his debut from the bench, was only born in 2003. So two guys at very different ends of their careers. Thomas Clarkson, like I mentioned, the 24-year-old will come off the bench and get his first test cap to replace Beelum. Ryan Baird is also going to replace Henderson, who looked a little bit lacking sharpness last week. So good on Baird. We'll see what impact he can make. He is genuinely, I think, a more dynamic player to come from the bench. Omani is still there. Some would argue, including my mate Tony from Distracted Sports, who I did a podcast with the other day. If you haven't seen, he said Omani is not the kind of guy you want on the bench. He said he's the starter or he's nothing. Do you guys agree? Do you think the bench should be kind of genuine impact guys to add punch from the bench, or do you think the experienced guy to potentially see out a lead in Omani is the guy? Craig Casey replaces Conor Murray. Sam Prendergast, like I mentioned, gets his debut if he comes on, replacing Kieran Frawley, who didn't have his best game for Ireland. And then Jamie Osborne kind of continues on. So that is the Irish squad. There are a few changes, a couple of debutants to come from the bench, and one change to the starting 15. For Argentina, who are only ranked 2 spots below Ireland now in the world rankings, with them having gone up and the Irish having dropped a little, they're also bolstered by the return of a couple of big gun players, which is pleasing for them because some of them were missing last week, namely Pablo Matera comes back into the side having served a suspension for a red card he picked up in the Rugby Championship. Gajo, Montoya and Sclavi, that is the same front row as last week. Sclavi managed to get himself on the score sheet last week as well, so good effort from that big man. It's usually Gajo if you're looking for the around the park stuff. But your scrum time will be an interesting one because they are not quite the scrummaging pack that the All Blacks are. So it'll be interesting to see if Ireland are able to kind of turn any screws there. Petty is in, replacing Molina, who drops to the bench in the second row. Proper skills second rower alongside Rubiolo, who is going to be the tackling machine, kind of like Ireland with James Ryan. You got Rubiolo last week making 21 tackles. He was their top tackler too. So you've eventually got a skills guy and a kind of harder hitter guy in that Argentina second row. As I mentioned, Matera is back. He's got genuinely everything in his game. Also, he's got a red card in him, so fingers crossed he's going to keep the discipline in check. Because largely this year, Argentina's discipline has been pretty good. Juan Martín Gonzalez switches to the number 7 jersey. Look out for him at line-out time as well. He's genuinely one of the kind of better ball-playing aerial forwards in World Rugby. And then Oviedo, who's been a bit of a dynamic ball carrier throughout the Rugby Championship, not busting tackles for fun, scoring tries, was a little bit more kind of core skills last week with his defensive and carrying game rather than just kind of pure X factor, but really good work rate. Gonzalo Bertrano and Thomas Albanoz are the continuing 9-10 combo. Albanoz is having some career form. It's taken him a very long time to take away that number 10 jersey from Santiago Carreras, who's more of a kind of utility 10. A winger or a fullback who plays 10, but Albanoz is an out-and-out 10, and he loves a ball carry. He loves getting through run meters. He loves busting tackles, and he's got a good kicking game on him as well. So really, really look out for that guy. You guys from the Irish side of the fence will be familiar with him if you've seen any of the Benetton games. He has been in excellent form for Argentina for basically since the Uruguay game back at the start of the season when they finally gave him a crack. Moroni comes in for Orlando in the number 12 jersey, so that's a swap of the veterans. Sinti continues on at 13. Iskro is at 14. The left wing is Delgui. Delgui was in fleet-footed form on both sides of the field last week because he swapped wings when Iskro went off. Iskro was chasing some high balls, and with the way they are policing the kind of blockers on kicks, look out for Iskro to potentially cause some havoc in the Irish backfield. But you got Keenan back there for Ireland, who is certainly pretty secure under the high ball himself. And then Malia, man, does that guy get involved a lot with the way Argentina play. Like, he had 18 carries last week for the Pumas. Like, I think the top Irish carry was Aki with 9 last week. And this is the fullback. The fullback just loves getting that ball. He's going to take a carry. So, yeah, look out for him in the number 15 jumper. Bench-wise, Ruiz, Calles, and Cordella. Cordella is 40, so I think he's even older than Cian Healy, but not quite as many caps, but he's going to come off the bench. It's the same front row replacements. Molina drops to the bench. Grondona also drops to the bench to make way for Matera. Then you got Gonzalo Garcia, who is the replacement 9, continuing on from last week. And then Santiago Carreras is back, and Justo Picardo is going to get his potential debut from the bench as well. So big congratulations to him. So both sides opting for 5-3 splits. Nobody's going with the extra forward this week. Now some stats, because I do love having a look at the stats to see how they compare. There's an interesting trend with Ireland in that they've lost 3 games this year. And in 3 games, they have had less than 50% possession. Ireland are a possession-based team. And those 3 games, England, South Africa, and New Zealand, where they lost, sure enough, are the games where Ireland lacked at least more than half the ball. So I don't know if that's a coincidence, but it seems like a pretty bloody direct correlation to me that when Ireland get the ball, good things happen. But when they struggle for it, not so much. And then the same was true with their lineouts. The 3 worst games for the Irish lineout have been those 3 losses as well. And that again kind of directly links to possession. If you can't secure your own lineout ball, you are going to have less possession. So they need to get that better, and they need to get their hands on the pill. Penalty count of 13 for Ireland last week was certainly high, and it was equal to the highest penalty count they have had all year. But the penalty count with Ireland doesn't necessarily correlate to like a lack of a win, because if you think about that big victory they got against France way back at the start of the Six Nations, they also conceded 13 penalties in that game as well. But I think the difference last week is that the New Zealanders only conceded, what was it, 5? When the penalty count is that lopsided, you need to start adapting to the referee, I suppose. New Zealand have been really guilty of that in the past, but actually got it right last week for a change. For the Pumas, I mentioned they are an inconsistent side. If you're looking since the start of the Rugby Championship, it's win, loss, loss, win, win, loss, win. They very rarely kind of back things up, and especially against the same teams. They went 1-1 against the All Blacks, 1-1 against the Box, and 1-1 against the Aussies. So consistency has been an issue. They are coming off a big win over the Italians. So the form guide would tell you they are due for a poor performance. Maybe they will kind of change that trend up with this one in Ireland. But as I said, it is going to be a tough one for them with the 6-day turnaround. But they've been a relatively clean side, disciplined this year, which is not something you necessarily think of in recent years when you're thinking Argentinian rugby. Matera did get that yellow card, but they've only had, red card. They've only had 3 yellow cards all year. Like Ireland's had at least 7. The Box have been getting them a lot, although they've been still winning games. But yeah, the Argentinians haven't been a kind of heavily carded side, which is pleasing and a change from previous years. And interestingly, their game is also, under Contepomi, slowly transitioning to kind of a more fluid game in terms of the amount that they pass the ball. When he first took over, they were a lot more direct. Like if you were looking at the kind of ratio between passes, kicks, and carries, there were a lot of carries. First option, run it up the guts. But they are passing it a lot more as the kind of season has gone on. So backing these guys' skills with good reason, because they've got some really good skilled players in the side. So if they can get some pill, hang on to some possession, and get it into the hands of some of these exciting outside backs, you never know what this Argentinian side could do. They may just ping the Irish backfield all day and set Israel to chase it. We'll see. Recent history between the sides is very much in Ireland's favour. The last 5 games go 4-1. I mean, Argentina don't really seem to beat Ireland in recent years unless it's a World Cup game. So, I mean, we're looking back a decade when we're looking at the last 5 games. Back in 2014, Ireland went over to Argentina and won. There was a 2015 victory for the Argentinians, but then the last 3, all in Dublin, all Irish victories, and all pretty comfortable, 28-19, 28-17, and 53-7. But that is a few years ago now, back in 2021. So Ireland has tended to have Argentina's number outside of the World Cups. Will that trend continue this weekend? As I said, there's a lot of kind of tastiness about this one, just given that both sides are coming into this match having had a very different previous week. The predictions-wise, the bookies are saying Ireland by 12, so that's a pretty comfortable prediction, and the Rugby Forecast algorithm is pretty similar, saying Ireland by 13. So Ireland predicted to bounce back. The Argentinians not predicted to be able to put in a kind of world-class performance 2 weeks running. It is on at the Aviva. It is on a Friday night. It's a late-ish, 8:10 kickoff for you guys over in Ireland, which is a morning kickoff for those of us in New Zealand. It's quite a pleasant kickoff time. I think it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:10. Paul Williams has got a New Zealand connection. He is the referee. Fingers crossed we're not talking too much about him after the game. He can be a bit of a stickler. So both sides will need to make sure they're listening to him quickly, or they risk getting pinged a lot. You guys let us know your thoughts on the game. How do you reckon it's going to go? Do you see Ireland bouncing back, which is kind of which way I'm leaning? Or do you see the Argentinians putting in a massive upset performance over Andy Farrell's Irish side with the Contepomi connection? Buy us a coffee or a beer if you want. Link down in the description. I would appreciate that if you guys appreciated any of the stats or anything else which you have seen or heard in this video. You guys take care of yourselves. There'll be certainly more rugby predictions, previews, reviews, stats and stuff to come over the next few days, as there's a lot more games on. Subscribe to the channel if you want some of that. Take care of yourselves, folks, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.